الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذ قلتم يا موسى لن نصبر على طعام واحد فادع لنا ربك يخرج لنا مما تنبت الأرض من بقلها وكثائها وفومها وعدسها وبصلها قال أتستبدلون الذي هو أدنى بالذي هو خير اهبطوا مصرا فإن لكم ما سألتم وضربت عليهم الذلة والمسكنة وباءوا بغضب من الله ذلك بأنهم كانوا يكفرون بآيات الله ويقتلون النبيين بغير الحق ذلك بما عصوا وكانوا يعتدون إن الذين آمنوا والذين هادوا والنصارى والصابئين من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر وعمل صالحا فلهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون صدق الله مولانا العظيم وبلغنا رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Allah Jalla Jalaluhu wa Amma Nawaluhu wa Azza Ismuhu wa Thamma Burhanuhu says, وَإِذْ قُلْتُمْ, remember the time when you said, Ya Musa, O Moses, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him. لَن نَصْبِرَ عَلَى طَعَامٍ وَاحِدٍ, we cannot endure only one food. We cannot afford only one and the same food. فَادْعُ لَنَا رَبَّكَ, so pray to your Lord and wish your Lord to create lana for us mimma tumbitul ard, from what the earth produces, to bring out from the earth what the earth produces, mim baqliha wa qithaiha wa fumiha wa adasiha wa basaliha, from its vegetables and cucumbers and wheat or garlic. Fum in Arabic is interpreted with wheat as well and with garlic as well. Wa adasiha, and lentils, pulses, wa basaliha, and onions. Qal, he answered you, أَتَسْتَبْدِلُونَ الَّذِي هُوَ أَدْنَى بِالَّذِي هُوَ خَيْرٌ, are you going to exchange the best thing for the worst thing? Ihbitu, come down to a city. فَإِنَّ لَكُمْ مَا سَأَلْتُمْ, so verily there is available what you want, what you asked me to do. what you ask me to provide. وَضُرِبَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ الذِّلَّةُ وَالْمَسْكَنَةُ وَبَاءُوا بِغَضَبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ, and humility and poverty was stamped upon them. وَبَاءُوا بِغَضَبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ, and they came back to the wrath of Allah, to the anger of Allah. They incurred anger of Allah upon themselves. ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ كَانُوا يَكْفُرُونَ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ, and this stamping of the humility and poverty and coming back to the wrath of Allah. ذَلِكَ, this is demonstrative pronoun, indicates toward these three items mentioned in the previous passage. This is because they would commit the infidelity with the verses of Allah, وَيَقْتُلُونَ النَّبِيِّينَ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ, and they would kill the prophets without any justification. ذَلِكَ بِمَا عَصَوْا وَكَانُوا يَعْتَدُونَ, and this was because they disobeyed the enjoinments of Allah, وَكَانُوا يَعْتَدُونَ, and they would transgress, they would exceed the limits. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَادُوا وَالنَّصَارَى وَالصَّابِئِينَ, verily those people who believed in Allah and in religious necessities. Imans is name of orthodoxy, accurate ideology, accurate concepts. وَالَّذِينَ, and those people who were properly guided, or who claimed to be Yehudi, to be Judah, to be Jews. وَالنَّصَارَى, and the total Christianity. وَالصَّابِئِينَ, and the people who came out of the religion. So, according to the tradition reported by Hazrat Abdul ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, Sabi'in were the people who combined between the Christianity and idolatry. They were astrologers, means worshipping of the stars. They began to worship the star as well and claiming to be Christian as well. Any one of them, man amana billahi wal yawmil akhir, any one of them believes in Allah and the judgment day, the dear hereafter, means according to the Islamic demand, when they comply with the conditions of Iman according to the prescription of the Holy Prophet. So, وَأَمِلَ صَالِحًا, and they do the good deeds, فَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ, their reward is with their sustainer, with their Lord. وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ, and there is no fear for them. They will never be afraid of anything. وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ, neither will they be grieved. So this is the verbal translation of the passage I recited before you. Here, the rest of the story of Israelites is being discussed here. So these are the circumstances which are containing the progress or degeneration of the community. When a community complies with the conditions of the religious necessity and obey the order of the Prophet according to the instructions of Allah, they always progress. But when the people give up all of the precepts of the Prophet and the verses of Allah and follow their own ambitions and desires, and they are zealous in whatever they like, then they have to be degenerated and they always have a fall down. So this is the gist of this explanation. Quran says, وَإِذْ قُلْتُمْ يَا مُوسَى لَن نَّصْبِرَ عَلَىٰ طَعَامٍ وَاحِدٍ. You must bear in mind that the addressee of this verse are the Jews residing in Medina Tayyibah. And these people were not present at the time of the conversation and dialogue of the Israelites to Moses, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him. But here they were taken for responsible for all of the actions and omissions committed or neglected by their forefathers. It means that faults and the blemishes and the qualities and the merits, all of the legacy handed down by the forefathers, by the ancestors, is inherited by the descendants and the coming generation, all with the progeny and posterities coming after the ancestors are always inheriting the property left down by their forefathers. Here, Quran addresses the people who were residing in Medina Tayyiba. إِذْ قُلْتُمْ يَا مُوسَى لَن نَصْبِرَ عَلَى طَعَامٍ وَاحِدٍ. Remember the time when you said, O Moses, we are not going to endure only one and the same food every day. So it means that the manna and salwa, the sweet dish and the quails which were served to them every day were rejected by those people. So this is a temperament of the community which is going to die and which is going to have a degeneration. This is the tendency of those communities. So if we are also committing the same things, we should expect the degeneration and fall down of our life. Being a Muslim, it is our duty to go against the way which were had by the people who were disobedient to the prophets. Since those people were disobedient to their prophets, therefore they had to be deprived of the bounties and facilities granted to them by virtue of that prophet. If we also commit the same things which was a cause of their degeneration, we will have the same result. It means that when a community copies the ideology and practice of the people who had already degenerated, the coming community will also experience the degeneration and downfall. Being a Muslim, it is our duty to follow our Holy Prophet and should be fully committed to the duties given to us by the Holy Prophet. لا تهنوا ولا تحزنوا وأنتم الأعلون إن كنتم مؤمنين. Quran says, don't be lazy and don't be afraid of anything. You will always prevail. You will always subjugate and conquer all of the universe, provided that your ideology is accurate. In kuntum mu'minin. Here it was not said in kuntum muslimin. Means if your belief and ideology and concepts are accurate, you will always make a progress and you will subjugate all of the other communities in the world. Quran says, when Moses, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him, was in peninsula of Sinai along with his community, he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide them with the best food. So they were given the manna and salwa, but after a short while, after a short time, they said, Lan nasbira ala tu'amin wahidin. So when they are enjoying, they would enjoy the sweet dish and fresh flesh of the quails. So this was one of the best food in the world. They said, we are not going to endure and to afford only one and the same food. So فَدْعُ لَنَا رَبَّكَ يُخْرِجْ لَنَا مِمَّا تُنْبِتُ الْأَرْضِ. So you should ask Allah to create for us, to provide us with the products of the earth, that is the vegetable, the cucumber, the garlic or wheat, and the lentils and pulses and garlic. You can check and compare the nobility of these articles which were mentioned by them with the manna and salwa. So these are very scanty, very trifle, very insignificant, but yet when a community is degrading themselves, so the noble things don't agree with their stomach. They begin to say that we are in demand of the vegetables, the cucumbers, the garlics, the lentils, the garlics, and many other, just like celery and leek. Such a things were demanded by them because they themselves were the former. They would work on the fields for Pharaoh and his community, and they were enjoying these vegetables. So the olden days were hit upon by them, and they began to demand the same thing: the vegetables, the cucumbers, the garlic, the lentils, the onion, etc., etc. قال أتستبدلون الذي هو أدنى بالذي هو خير. He said, what a bad thing you are choosing. You are exchanging the best thing for the worst thing. So this is not a demand of intelligence. An intelligent person or a properly guided person cannot do like that. Means you have been deviated by your nature. You are being misled by the Satan, because the things which is being provided to you is the best thing in the human availability, and you are demanding the things which are common and very cheap and very mean in the society. So you are under the shadow of a prophet, therefore you are supplied with the best thing available in the society or in the market. But this is a misfortune of yourself, that you are demanding the worst thing against the best thing. Quran says, "Ihbitu misran." So you should go out of this place. فَإِنَّ لَكُمْ مَا سَأَلْتُمْ. So those things you are demanding are available everywhere. If you go in any city, Misran is a common noun. It is not speciality of Egypt, which was populated by Pharaoh or his community, but this is a common and general noun which says that this is not speciality of any city. Wherever you go, you find the things you are demanding from me. وَضُرِبَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ الزِّلَّةُ وَالْمَسْكَنَةُ وَبَاءُوا بِغَضَبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ. Since they disobeyed the precepts of the Prophet, therefore they were deprived of the bounties of Allah, and instead they had to suffer the humility, the poverty, the wrath of Allah. Means all of the bounties granted to the societies are always inextricably woven together with the precepts of the Prophet. When a person violates the order of the Prophet, he cannot achieve the blessings of Allah. Blessings of Allah are always all together with the side glances, with the kind glances of the Prophet. When they were deprived of the glances of the Prophet, they were deprived of the bounties and blessings of Allah. And this is a moral to be achieved by the Muslims. All of the Muslims should come to know that all of the Muslims will achieve the bounties of Allah by virtue of Muhammad Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. If the Muslims disobey the orders, the enjoinments, the commandments, the injunctions of the Prophet, they will never receive any bounties of Allah. In both of the worlds, only the obedient to the Prophet are bestowed upon the bounties of Allah. Bounties of Allah are always bound to be bestowed on the people who are obedient and submissive to the Prophet. You can see that Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu was fully committed and submissive to Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he was so dignified that Nabi Kareem alayhi sallam said, "Ma nafa'ani malu ahadin ma nafa'ani malu Abi Bakr." No one's economy or property or the wealth were proved to be beneficial to me more than Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala. And then he was granted the caliphate in Islamic world. And then Farooq Azam radiallahu ta'ala, he sacrificed whatever he had in his life, and he was fully committed and submissive to Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with the result that he was granted the conquest a vast part of the world. Similarly, Hazrat Usman Ghani radiallahu ta'ala was fully committed to the precepts of the Holy Prophet, and he was completely obedient to Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in spite of the fact that he was very lenient and very humble. But he conquered many countries of Africa, and he was granted a highly dignified place in the society. He was sovereign of the country, which was the superpower in those days. Similarly, all of the other companions of the Holy Prophet, they were fully committed and submissive to Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Therefore, they were granted so much dignity that Allah said, radiyallahu anhum wa radu anhu. السابقون الأولون من المهاجرين والأنصار والذين اتبعوهم بإحسان رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه وأعد لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها ذلك الفوز العظيم. Means the senior people are senior. السابقون الأولون. According to grammatical analysis, السابقون is the subject of the sentence, and al-awwalun is predicate of the sentence, mubtada or khabar. Min al-muhajirin wal ansar, from the emigrants and the local people who supported the cause of the Holy Prophet. وَالَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوهُمْ بِإِحْسَانٍ. Not only they themselves succeeded in the life, any person who follows them in the steps of their life towards the Holy Prophet, they will also be granted the pleasure of Allah, and they are bound, they are deserving person to have the paradise and ذَلِكَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ. So this is one of the best success in the society, in the life. Means all of the bounties and success were granted to them because of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is not mystery of only Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but this is a principle of all of the prophets. As long as they were obeying the order of Moses, they were granted man and salwa, and when they disobeyed, then Quran says, وَضُرِبَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ الزِّلَّةُ. This is the same community who were granted man and salwa because they were obedient to the precepts of Moses, and they were abiding by the rules and regulations prescribed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through Moses. May grace and peace of Allah be upon him. So that was the result of their obedience to the Prophet. Means when they were slaves, they were enslaved by Pharaoh and his community, and centuries they suffered the slavery. But as soon as they took the responsibility of the obedience of the Prophet, on the same day they were emancipated, manumitted, and liberated from the slavery of centuries. And for them, the sea was split into 12 ways, and on the same day they got the clouds overshadowing them, and on the same day man and salwa was also sent down upon them. But this was the result of obedience of the Prophet. But as soon as they disobeyed the order of the Prophet, on the same day, Quran says, وَضُرِبَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ الزِّلَّةُ وَالْمَسْكَنَةُ وَبَاءُوا بِغَضَبٍ مِنَ اللَّهِ. So the moral to be achieved by this story is just obedience of the Prophet is a mystery of the life. If you want to succeed in every ways of the life, in every field of your life, you will have to obey the order of the Holy Prophet. Just like the previous prophets were also with the same status, that as long as their community was obedient and submissive in front of the Prophet, they would be granted the bounties of Allah. But as soon as they violated and launched a mutiny against the order of the Prophet, so divine orders were violated by them, then they were deprived of all of the facilities granted to them. And not only the facilities were granted, but humility and poverty and wrath of Allah was stamped upon them. So when Quran says, Ya Bani Israel, azkuru ni'mati allati an'amtu alaykum wa anni faddaltukum ala al-alamin. Remember the time, O children of Israel, when the bounty I granted to you, and I exalted you over all of the universe. These are the same people when they disobeyed the order of Allah and violated the divine order. So all of the dignities were withdrawn and all of the facilities were taken back, and they were stamped with the humility and poverty and wrath of Allah. Here Quran itself explains and reflects and elucidates the mystery of their progress and their degeneration. ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ كَانُوا يَكْفُرُونَ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ. This was why. This was because they would commit the infidelity with the verses of Allah. Means when ideologically they were heterodox bad-aqeedah, when they committed heterodoxy and violated the orthodoxy Siyati aqeedah, when they violated the principles of orthodoxy and they adopted the heterodoxy, means firstly their ideology was changed. So all of the actions and omissions, the good practice or the virtues are changed into the sins when the ideologically one is misled. Quran says, kanu yakfuruna bi ayatillahi. All of the bad things happened from them, and the wrath of Allah and humility, submissivity, and the poverty and wrath of Allah were stamped upon them because they committed the heterodoxy. They would commit the infidelity with the verses of Allah. When a person commits infidelity with the verses of Allah, so this is a fundamental belief that one should be abiding by the verses of Allah revealed through a prophet to the community. So firstly, they were misled, they were misconceptuated. Their conceptuation was changed. وَيَقْتُلُونَ النَّبِيِّينَ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ. Oh, subhanallah. What a beautiful arrangement and respective order expressed here. Firstly, they began to commit the infidelity, and after that they began to slaughter the prophets. It means that the blasphemy, the sacrilege, the irreverence cannot be committed by a person against a prophet unless one is properly infidel. So wherever Quran says that the previous communities would commit the infidelity, would doing the blasphemy against the prophets, or committing the sacrilege against the prophets, or they would blaspheme against the prophet, firstly the infidelity came into their hearts. The infidelity was cause of this sacrilege, the blasphemy against the prophet. Unless one's belief is safe and sound, he cannot commit any blasphemy against the prophets. So wherever you go, you will have to check. In the previous communities, as Hud alayhi salatu wasalam was mentioned by the Holy Quran, وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ وَقَالَ الْمَلَوْ مِنْ قَوْمِهِ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا وَكَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا وَأَطْرَفْنَاهُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا Ma hadha illa basharum misluna. Here Quran says that the community of Hud alayhi salatu wasalam, they did not commit any infidelity or any blasphemy against the Prophet unless they became the infidel. Infidelity was first and the blasphemy against the Prophet was the second step. Nowadays, all of the Muslims are bound to understand that if a person commits a blasphemy against a Prophet, so they should think that there is something wrong with the belief of this person. He must have committed the infidelity. Otherwise, the blasphemy against the Prophet is not possible. Whenever and wherever any person committed a blasphemy or insolence against a Prophet, so the motive, the interior motive of that practice was really the infidelity. Unless one mentally and conceptually is not infidel, he cannot commit the blasphemy against the Prophet. Quran says, وَيَقْتُلُونَ النَّبِيِّينَ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ. They would commit the infidelity with the verses of Allah and they would kill the prophets بِغَيْرِ حَقِّ. The killing of the Prophet is always without any justification. But here, just to emphasize the point that it was quite bare, self-evident, without any quotation of authority. It was just like a broad daylight open to them that the killing of the Prophet was really unlawful and injustifiable by them. ذَلِكَ بِمَا عَصَوْا وَكَانُوا يَعْتَدُونَ. And this type of commission of crime and commission of sins was not possible. But بِمَا عَصَوْا وَكَانُوا يَعْتَدُونَ, this was on account of their disobedience and exceeding of the limits. It means that one sin can lead to another sin. When one sin can a cause of another sin. Therefore, O Muslims who are watching the TV and listening my speech, I shall request you not to do even a single, the minute sin as well, because one sin can be a cause of another sin. One sin can lead to other sin. Here Quran says they reached to the slaughtering of the prophets because their beginning chapter, their preliminary stage was just they were careless about the sins, since they would commit the sins without any hesitation, without any restriction, and by they reached to the enhanced type of the sins, and that was the slaughtering of the Prophet. Here Quran says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَادُوا وَالنَّصَارَى وَالصَّابِئِينَ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا فَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. Since the addressee of this passage of the Holy Quran were the Jews of Medina Tayyibah, and they were believing themselves to be offspring of the prophets, Quran tries to make them understand that the lineage is really a source of dignity. Being offspring of the Prophet is also a dignity, as Quran itself argued for that very purpose. Quran says, Ya Bani Israel. Here they had some names, but no other names was used. Their lineage was used. O the children of Israel. فَإِنَّ تَرَتُّبَ الْحُكْمِ عَلَى الْفَصْفِ يُشْعِرُ بِعِلِّيَّةِ لَهُ. Allama Bhazavi, whose son of death is 685. He writes here in Bhazavi Sharif, when an order is a result of a quality, then that quality is always a reason of that order. Here Quran says, Ya Bani Israel, means they were exalted over all of the universe, but this order was result of Bani, means oh the children of Israel. So being a child is not a practice, this is a lineage, this is nasab, means you were granted the dignity, the superiority, the supremacy over all of the then world because you were offspring of a prophet. Being offspring of a prophet, you were exalted and you were given the supremacy and superiority to the other society. So here Quran itself confirms that being a son of dignified person is really a source of dignity. We believe that you were dignified people, but as long as you were obedient to the order of Allah and you were abiding by the principles suggested by Jacob, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him, as Quran says, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَاتَّبَعَتْهُمْ ذُرِّيَّتُهُمْ بِإِيمَانٍ أَلْحَقْنَا بِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ وَمَا أَلَتْنَاهُمْ مِنْ عَمَلِهِمْ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. Surah Tur. This verse says that the believers whose offsprings followed them in their belief, they could not follow in their practice. Mean their practice, their actions and the behavior, their character was not identical to that of their parents, but their ideology, their concept were the same as was of their parents. So on the judgment day, they would be attached with their pious forefathers on account of their unity in the ideology. So as long as the offspring of pious people are abiding by the set of the principles believed by them, they would also be attached and affiliated and would be granted the same dignity in the paradise which were granted to their forefathers. So we believe that you are, being the offspring of the prophets, were really entitled to be granted the same dignity as your forefathers and your family were granted. But now you are using the name and you are disobeying the ideology. You have refused and disbelieved in the ideology of your forefathers. You should know that with the commission of infidelity, no lineage can exist. All of the lineage is cancelled and abrogated and completely banished when the ideology is deviated and neglected by the coming generation. As long as you were abiding by the set of the principles believed by your forefathers, you were, according to us, dignified in the world. But since you have committed the infidelity, you worship the calf, and you commit the blasphemy against the prophets, and you would kill the prophets. Killing of the prophet cannot be rationalized in any way. He cannot avoid the infidelity, because the blasphemy against any prophet is conclusively infidelity, and this is a very enhanced and highly culpable action and highly infidelity, that you would kill the prophets. Therefore you cannot use the name. Here the names were mentioned and the conclusion was made afterwards. Quran says, in lazina amanu. No matter, one is called the believer, and it makes no difference. One says himself to be a Jew, and it makes no difference. One is called the supporter of Jesus, and no matter, one has got the two religions put together. All of these people mentioned here, they are claiming to be very superior in the society, but I shall tell you, man amana billahi wal yawmil akhir. The matter would be decided. The decisive point is to believe in the oneness of Allah, in the individuality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and believe in the characteristics and qualities of Allah, sifat salbiya and ijabiyya, and izafiyya and zatiyya. All of the qualities should be believed in, all of the qualities of Allah will have to be believed in. Wal Yawmil Akhir, at the day of judgment, means one should believe that he is going to be adduced in the court of Allah and he will have to answer all of the questions made by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And falahum ajruhum in rabbihim, the people who are abiding in belief of the principles told and explained and given by the Prophet to them. If a person is completely abiding by the set of principles and he is believing in the accountability of the judgment day, the accountability of the judgment day really is a proper source of controlling the human being. Just like you are driving a car on the road and you all of a sudden you happen to see the photo of camera on a board and there is a speed limit, and automatically without any instructions your foot goes to the brake, because you are fully convinced that if I violate the principle of traffic, I will have to be adduced in front of police, and police will check my driving license, and there certain stamps would be stamped on my driving license, and certain points would be stamped on my driving license, and automatically sooner or later in this way my driving license can be cancelled. So when you are sure of the cancellation of your license, you automatically break the speed and you control the car. If a person is fully convinced that he is going to be adduced in front of Allah and his scrutinization is going to be held and he is going to be taken to task, so automatically he will control himself and he will try to accurate his principles and he will try to check his practice because of his satisfaction and his surety, his certainty that I am going to be adduced in the court of Allah and I will have to answer all of the questions made by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore he becomes very accurate about every step of the life. Quran says anyone, he may be called Jew, he may be called Christian, he may be called astrologers. Astrologers means the person who worship the stars. The Sabi'in were interpreted by different type of Muslim scholars. Some of them are of the opinion that they are astrologers, means the worshipping of the stars. Some of them are with the opinion that they are worshipping of the angels, and some of them are with the opinion that that was a mixture of Judaism and Christianity. Whatever the circumstances may be, whatever the detail may be, but they were not on a permanent religion. Quran says whatever one is called, but when he is completely abiding by the ideology in Allah and in his apostle, he believes in the necessities of Islam and the judgment day and correct his practice, he does the good deeds, he would be given the reward by his Allah, and there will be no afraid of anyone for him, and he will not be grieved. Inshallah ta'ala, Allah will pardon him. So this is the lecture of today. The last verse says that the ideology in the Islamic necessities, so which contains the oneness of Allah and the supremacy of the Prophet and the judgment day, in all of the necessities will be questioned on the judgment day. You must remember that Islamic necessities can be interpreted, which is going to be questioned about in the grave or either on the judgment day. The things which are not going to be questioned about in the grave, neither on the judgment day, they are not Islamic necessities. Therefore, the Muslim scholars should not try to waste the time of the society in unnecessary matters. Inshallah, Aziz, in the next chapter, these very details would be elucidated again, inshallah ta'ala. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ وَآخِرُ دَعْوَانَا أَنِ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ الصَّلَاةُ وَالسَّلَامُ عَلَى رَسُولِهِ الْكَرِيمِ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ بِرَحْمَتِكَ يَا رَحْمَنُ